We'll make a start. Kia ora tātou, no mai, haere mai. Hello and welcome to the fourth, I think it is, of our community rugby webinar series called Wayne Masters Talk Wingwa. I'm Wayne from New Zealand Rugby. I'll be your host tonight. This evening we're celebrating girls and women's rugby, and we'll be discussing with our two expert panelists. We're happy to have them with us. How do we help create a great experience for our wahine players? And our two panelists will share their insights, their tips, and we'll endeavour to answer any questions that you might have as well. Like any, well-planned, effective training session, we begin by sharing tonight's schedule. So we'll be together for about 30 minutes. If it's red hot chat, then we might stay on for a little bit longer. If you've got questions for our panel, as I said, please type them in to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll look to answer those live, or one of the panel or one of our support staff will answer you directly. Ka pai? Awesome. Hey, so tonight's special guests, both of them have rushed in from being out on the grass or being with their team, so they're both very, very busy. So we're rapt to have you both with us. But firstly, just introducing Mel Bosman, born in Tauranga, Moana, Ngāti Raukawa and Naitarangi, and she also gives a shout out to her mum's family on the shores of the Mersey. I won't break into that song. I can't remember what it is, but something about the Mersey River. She's alumni of St Mary's College here in Wellington, although I'm beaming in from Auckland tonight, and I know they've got a great rugby program there. She's got an MSc, let me get this right, Mel, in sedimentology. Is that right? Have I said that correctly? And worked for a good while in the geothermal and the geology exploration industry, as well as balancing a sort of a near or nigh on sort of decade with the Black Ferns, Black Fern number 119. I'm hoping that's correct. So did that, and then hung up her boots for family with her partner Nico and girls Eden and Maya, who she said keeps her grounded because we know that she's busy as a head coach of the Tasman Markle team in the Wharapama Cup. She's also involved in the coaching group in the Opiki with the Blues. Tēnā koe, Mel.
Kia ora Wayne.
Hey, equally stoked to have with us Whitney Hanson, as we all know, assistant coach of our Black Ferns. She's been part of that setup for a couple of years now and doing great things. Previously was balancing coaching with being VP at St Francis of Assisi School in Christchurch. I think that's along Innes Road somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. Also part of the coaching group with Matatu. Whitney, I'm just going to hand things over to you. Tell us a bit about your coaching journey up to you sitting there in camp with the Black Ferns, just before we get started with any other questions.
Yes, I've been coaching for a few years now. I started off just coaching the club team that I'd stepped away from playing in after doing a year of player coaching. And when you get to the point you're not going to pick yourself, it's probably time to hang the boots up. And so did that for a few seasons, and then actually coached against Mel. We were rivals for a good couple of years in the under-18 space for the Canterbury girls team, and then went on to coach Canterbury at FPC level. So have done that for 2 seasons now, and also had the pleasure of working with Matatu in the latest super season. Post that got an internship with World Rugby with the Black Ferns, and now I'm in here, which is awesome.
Oh, great. And look, we really appreciate how busy you must be by being in camp and got a game coming up on Saturday. So thanks for your time this evening. Hey, well, let's kick things off. Remember, whānau, type in those questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Mel, I've got a question for you to begin with. I know you've talked about understanding your people behind your players. Tell us a little bit about what you mean by that.
Well, for me, it's really important to understand that when you're creating an environment as a coach, you're not just coaching athletes, but people. We've got mums, we've got shift workers, we've got young people with young children and multiple jobs and multiple hats. So if you're going to get the best buy-in from your people, you really need to understand them. And it's really comes down to off-field stuff where you're having that conversation and taking the time to listen to your people and really learn. We're there to listen, to learn. before you start sort of throwing in your coach's hat and telling them this is what we need in this space. So that's really what that's all about, and it's different for different cultures too, I find. You know, I've come from a multicultural background, and I know with Polynesian and Māori in particular, you're not just coaching their daughter or their mum, you're coaching the whole family. So and you've got to take them on that journey with you in order to get the best of the person that's in your team. So that for me is big, and I'm always willing to sort of know the parents of a player or the children of a player as well, just so I make sure that I'm pitching at the right level for that person to get the best out of her.
Awesome. Hey, look, thanks for that. I love that bit you talked about, listening to understand, not listening to reply to, listening to understand, and getting to know who, whose shoulders are these people sitting on, who are they supporting, who do they bring with them. It's fantastic. Love it. Hey, Whitney, question for you. I was reading an interview that you'd done recently, and you talked about the similarities between teaching and coaching. We talked about your background in education, and you talked about the importance of engaging players. So question is, how can coaches do that? What are things that you do? Tell us more about that engagement piece.
Yeah, well, first of all, I hope I am engaging. Hope I am doing that. But I think if you liken learning to real life to sometimes how it looks on the field, I don't think we get that right all the time. So if I want to know how to do something, a lot of the time something sparks an interest. I'll get on YouTube, I'll have a look how to do that thing, and then I'll start to have a go at it. But unless there's that real genuine spark of interest, or me wanting to, or having a realization or problem solving that there's something that I need to learn or would like to learn more about, you're not going to form the same understandings and really unpack and draw on prior knowledge that you already have. So I think part of it is problem solving and setting up, like being a bit of a facilitator for the experiential learning and creating an opportunity for people to have that discovery of what that is. So what it doesn't look like is me having a plan, coming in, doing the telling, opening up the brain, feeding in the information, close it, good, done. But what it might look like is sort of setting up something where players are problem solving, and then being able to be adaptable, having an idea about where it might go, but being okay to change and be flexible to where it needs to go for that player.
I like that individualism that you speak of, and being curious as a coach, always being curious, wanting to learn more, being inquisitive, trying to work things out. And the fact, talking about being a facilitator, I love that. I've heard a quote where it said, great coaching is where you create opportunities for others to learn, and then you get the heck out of the way. And I kind of like that. So being a facilitator rather than a telling somebody something. Love it. Hey, Mel, back to you. As coaches, we like to throw around these flash words, and clarity is a word that we often use from a technical point of view. But I've heard you speak about clarity of your non-negotiables. So tell us a bit more about that.
For me, and this has been probably recent learning in the last few years, is really having a strong understanding of who I am as a person before I throw myself in the ring as a coach. Because often, things don't go right as coaches, and there's a lot of pressure on you. And you often find yourself second guessing yourself, and then you're stressed, and then it flows out to the team and it flows out to your players as well. And, for me, I've learned that if I have good understanding and clarity of what I'm not prepared to negotiate as a coach, and that's at all levels, not just high performance, then it gives me that ability to prevent a lot of things from happening that could possibly sort of tip the boat over in the future. So I'm very much focused on being a preventative coach rather than a solution-focused coach. So I don't need to have the solutions to solve problems because I've already prevented it from happening. But in order for me to do that, I really need to sort of clarify within myself. I sort of liken it to my root system, how I nourish my roots, how I look after them. So always be very clear in my PPH, who I am, Knowing my people is another one. On the tactical side, like I know my game plan like the back of my hand, those sorts of things. And also acknowledging the soils in which I'm nourishing my roots. So in my case, you know, a lot of it, I've got a lot of mentorship around me that's really supported me through my growth, and it's being able to acknowledge that and understand what that gives me before I move into a campaign with a team.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I've got a question that's just coming from one of our Zoomies. I think we're called. I think you're called if you come into webinar. So I'm going to throw this one to you, Whitney. But Mel, feel free to jump in, because I'm sure our listeners would like to hear from both of you. What is it that you love about coaching?
For me, it is about being part of someone's journey and an opportunity to help them become a better player, but probably more importantly for me, a better person. So any opportunity I can get to be a part of that is pretty special. And yeah, I think when you see them be successful, for me, that's the part where I get the most pleasure from, I guess. I joked about when I took on the FPC role that, you know, I'm not a person that's here to have a picture with the trophy and then we won it. And I was so excited just getting around and celebrating all the work everyone else had done. I actually don't have a picture with it, so I have to one day try and win that back. But yeah, so that's for me, being a part of that journey with people.
Oh, lovely. Mel?
I'd have to total what Whitney said, 100%. Yeah, it's having that ability to, you know, create special humans and help them be the best versions of themselves. And, you know, everyone's got different measure of success. Like for me, it might even be watching a young girl have confidence off the field as well, having the ability to hold herself in a space and be able to realise that her words and her thoughts are just as important as somebody else's, you know, or someone that's learning to catch a ball or play sport for the first time. You know, those successes are huge for me, and it really fills my cup. And those are the stories that when I come home and I tell my daughters, you know, what a great day I've had. It's about that, not so much about the results on the scoreboard. That is a good part of it, but really it's that journey that those players take within themselves and in their bodies to, you know, go out there and put their best selves on the field during the season. Yeah, like Whit said, it's like gold. It's like gold for me.
Yes, success comes in many ways, and not just on the scoreboard. Developing players with people, you know, it's about developing people. Whitney, I've got a question for you. You talked about, you know, being that coach that started like many because no one else put a hand up, and so you brought a hand up. Starting out with your, I think it might have been with University of Canterbury, perhaps. Helped you to know back then when you started coaching?
You've cut out for me a little bit, Wayne. I'm not sure if it's my internet or yours. I just missed the end of that.
No, you did. Yeah.
I'll try it again. I'm beaming in from a hotel room tonight here in Auckland. I don't think the mobile was great. What I was saying is, what would have been helpful for you when you first started coaching?
I think what was really helpful for me was the openness of coaches that sat above me. So I think like knowing that you don't have to have all the answers, and being really comfortable being vulnerable with the group if there is something that comes up that you don't know, and sort of just being really clear with them at the beginning, like, hey, I'm not going to know everything. Some of it we'll discover together, and some of it I'll go away and get the answer, but know that if there is something that we need to know, I'm committed to going and getting that. And then just surrounding yourself with great people who, and that's what's probably one of the most amazing things about coaches in New Zealand, is that everyone is so open. It's IP is not really a thing. People are willing to share and help others get better. So I've had amazing mentors and the likes of Mike Cron, Blair Baxter, who I work with in Canterbury, and So knowing that, and even, yeah, Jace Ryan was awesome over like the Matatu season. So knowing that they're approachable, going to them if needed, and also knowing that I don't have to have all the answers yet. I'm still chasing that. I'll keep working on it. But yeah, being able to be vulnerable around that, I think is important, because the moment that you try and bluff that you know something or you're not authentically yourself is when you lose credibility with players. That's a hard thing to get back.
I've actually just been in a workshop for the last 2 days, and things like being your authentic self, and not trying to blag your way through was a big part of it, and also making sure that you look after yourself first, so you're at your best to be the best for others. And I think two of your coaching mates, Tony Christie and Blair Baxter, were in that workshop as well. Apologies for my poor internet connection. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Mel, we'll go to you, and while you're doing that, I might try and improve my my Wi-Fi coverage. Mel, you've talked about the work-life balance. So tell us about that.
Well, I can certainly tell you it's a work in progress. It's like a live document. It's organic. It changes. It changes with the situation at home. So often, you know, again, I talked about going on the journey, but you've really got to take your family on the journey with you to get them to buy into your time away. You know, especially for me, being a mum of a 6 and a 4-year-old, and a husband that works full time as well. You know, our hours usually are outside the norm, either very early in the morning or late at night. But it's about really finding a good plan and a system that works at home first, and then coaching will come around that. So if you try and do it the other way, which I have done in the past, I can assure you it doesn't work. You know, you've really got to. For me, there was a time there where my children were just not happy with mummy not being home all the time. So, you know, I changed that up and ended up buying them, you know, Tasman Marco jerseys and brought them along to always, you know, the games. So brought my family along with me. We were lucky enough to be able to do that, but also brought them into the office where I work a lot, so they understand where I go. And my husband is the same. So, you know, often he might be doing some video footage for me. So, you know, I can bring him on that journey as well. But that balance is never sort of in one place at one time. It moves, it's fluid, and you've just got to be able to move with it. But I think one of the most important aspects to that is it's having these open communications with your family, and also letting the team know, because often when you get in the heat, under the pressure of a campaign, sometimes your players may think you're a robot, and you've got to remind them from time to time that you pinch me, I'm gonna feel the pain just as much as you are. So it's always good to, like what said, be your authentic self, and don't be afraid to sort of show your vulnerability too if you're feeling the pressures of being a coach as well. So you don't always have to pretend to have all your shit together, if you like. You know, it's okay to be you. So we work on that all the time as a family.
Awesome. Hey, there's lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to throw to our attendees. I've got a question for either of you to answer. Maybe Whitney, if you could give this one a crack to begin with. The question is, when beginning with a new team, how do you get buy-in from players, especially those that might be resistant to change? So how do we get that buy-in?
Yeah, I can, for me personally, like I'm a coach who's really big on empowerment. So for me, the first bit would be about how do we create a vision to get alignment in terms of what this team wants to achieve, and then how do we get the players to take ownership of that. And I think one of the things that sticks with me in and around genuine autonomy from some of the research that I've done is that the best autonomy comes from authorship rather than ownership. So if I create it and then I get you to take charge of it, you'll have a little bit of buy-in, probably more so than if I'm just running it as a coach. But if I get you to create it and then you live it, then that's when you'll have really authentic buy-in and real authentic autonomy, and your players are leading and driving what you're trying to do and won't be able to, or, yeah, they're engaged in it because it's theirs.
Mel, anything to add to that? It's a theme of some of the questions coming through, and as we all know, it's a really important part of that environment piece. Anything to add to that?
Well, not too much more, but it's really having, like what said earlier, being this tell-all coach, it really doesn't work. It doesn't work for any age group, to be fair. So letting those players hear their voices, let them see it on the paperwork that you're giving them, or let them see it on the board that you're writing on for them, is hugely important, because every player wants to feel a sense of belonging. And as a coach, you are part of that environment that creates that, and giving them the power to show you what that looks like, and then going on that journey with them is huge. It's huge.
Yeah, look, thank you both for that. I've got a question here. It says, as a female in the game, what has been some of the challenges, and what advice would you give to a high performing coach? Tell us about the challenges of being a wahine in what's still predominantly a male tāne space.
But you want to take that one?
I was going to say, do you want to kick that one off?
I don't mind.
I think, to be honest, like in my experiences, I'm really lucky that I've been surrounded with great people, and I've been given some really great opportunities. Maybe a bit of advice to people who are challenged in that space, or not given equal opportunities as a female. I'd say just continue to be you, be yourself, and your work will speak for itself. I think sometimes maybe there's a few people out there who need a little bit more convincing on things. If it's a female coach versus a male, again, like I said, I haven't personally dealt with that, probably just speaking of others' stories, but I think if you can earn credibility by being yourself, and might take a little bit longer, but worth it, and know that there's an awesome network of female coaches that are out there to support anyone, whether it's females or males, or people coaching in the women's space. So I'm always available. Someone's giving you a hard time, I know Mel probably happy to be on the other end of the phone too. But yeah, create a network and confide in that people in, and use them as support.
Mel, tell us about any challenges that you've had, or how any advice you would give to somebody in that space.
Well, I was sort of very I was very, very driven, very ambitious. Like I am a little bit different to Whitney. I came off a very long career with the Black Ferns, and I knew very early on in my playing career that I wanted to be a coach. But I was, actually I was a very small prop in a position where the players were often bigger. So I was always often a stickler for detail. And it's something that I learned, and I processed, and I learned, and I just keep learning until I was, good at my role, and, gave the team the best of me. So with that knowledge, I started off coaching women and younger females, especially, and I sort of worked my way up as my confidence grew. But I was a person that really challenged myself. I like working with men as well. And I remember a time I was asked to come in and coach, be a set piece coach for one of our Premier A men's teams here. And I was like very excited for the opportunity. And one of the coaches said, I hate to say this, mate, but you're going to have to prove yourself. You're going to have to show your credibility. And I just thought, well, would you say that to a male coach? But I thought, well, you can either, take it as a protest, or you can just roll your sleeves up and go, all right, then, I'll show you what I've got to offer. And as it was, I was able to sort of lay down what I wanted to achieve, the objectives, and the men responded very easily, you know, and they enjoyed me in that space. So that was just a sort of another feather in my cap, if you like. And I just keep pushing myself that way. I didn't have too many opportunities coming through, but certainly when they landed on my lap, I took them, and I really had to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. You know, if you work in your environment where you're just comfortable and you don't push yourself, that's where you'll stay. So I was often looking for more discomfort in my life, and I just keep pushing, and I'm still there today. But on that journey, you know, you meet fellow coaches. I like coaches like Whitney. I met her, gosh, I think nearly 5 years ago now. And it's on that journey where you create that network system that you rely heavily on, and but you know it's there. You know, you can look through, for me, past coaches, past players, fellow coaches now, and they don't have to be female. It's just somebody that's willing to share their knowledge with you as well. But embrace it all, right? Because you take what you want out of it and make it yours.
Thanks for that, Mel. And yeah, and for me, for us out there, Tāne men, we have a responsibility to be allies, you know, an allyship, and to help advocate for our wahine in the wahine game, or in the men's game, just as coaches, not as women coaches in women's game, or just as coaches, but we have a responsibility as allies and advocates. The questions are still coming in quick and fast, and Whitney, I know you're very busy, as are you, Mel. But if we could just maybe squeeze in a couple more questions, that'd be fantastic. So here's a question. We'll go back to you, Whitney. How do you instill confidence in our players to be their best without fear of failure, and to be able to bounce back from mistakes?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because that's one of the things that I think is probably, for me, one of the biggest difference in coaching men and women. Is that often, if you ask, and don't ask me what the research is, but I'm sure there is some out there where I got it from sometime. But if you sort of say to a group of males and a group of females on the whole, where they would rate their competency based on where it actually is, males is often higher. So they'll say, oh, I'm this good, when actually at that they might be here. For females, if they're here, they might actually say, I'm this good, and it's often lower. So that's massive. And I guess you could call that other piece where they're rating themselves, maybe that's called confidence, right? So that competence versus confidence piece. And a large part of what we're doing in the Black Ferns at the moment, and how I've coached in previous teams, is in and around strengths-based training. So a lot of players will pick apart their game in a review, trying to get all the clips where they've done something wrong. They then want to take that into training the next week and train, you know, the 10 missed tackles. So all they do is 20 minutes in their own time of tackle. And then they're going into the game thinking, I'm useless at this. And then it ends up being a plateau of that skill, or they fall backwards. So I think a big piece around that is create an environment where people can take risks, encourage mistakes, get people to understand that, if, like Mel said before, if you're in your comfort zone and you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. Help people to get out of that pit if they go too deep into the learning, and encourage like training of strengths and the enhancing of superpowers. So we talk about like an 80%, 20%. So train on your individual stuff, 80% that you're really good at, and what's going to be your point of difference, and make 20% of that piece around them 10 missed tackles you did.
Yeah, finding the good. And like you say, focusing on making your superpower even better. I like that. I like that 80-20. Mel?
Just a little bit to add to that. I share the same philosophy with Whit. Is you're as a coach, you get the ability to create the environment that in which you want to coach in. And so for me, we have a learning environment, and then I will introduce a performance environment. So in that learning environment, again, you're very clear with your messages around what your the objectives are of your group. So if you're in a learning environment, they can make 100 mistakes. That's fine. And they understand that. And it's the language that the players use with each other that's just so important, you know. And where you build your confidence is bringing them back in, giving them a bit more information, layering a bit more information, another tool out of their tool bag, if you like, and saying, right, I'm going to hand you this tool. Now see what you can do with it. And then you let them see the growth in themselves. You know, they might have dropped 80% of their balls at the start. By the end of the evening, they're only dropping 40%. So for them, it's a visual picture of where their performance has increased, and that even though they're still dropping balls, it's okay, because what you're encouraging is the fact that they've just learned to drop 40% less balls in that half an hour of that program, you know. And in the performance environment, you're asking them to bring in the clarity from the learning environment, and then we're looking to sort of mirror what our game is going to look like. So now their brain switches over to something quite different. So they've got the clarity in their head from the learning environment. Now it's time to perform. So that's what I like to do as a coach. I find that works quite well. I think actually just to add, also in the gym space, you know, a classic example was a young lady had a deadlift of 95 kilos at testing, and I asked her, well, let's go for 105 kilos tonight. And she said, well, no, I can't. I've never done more than 100 kilos. And I said, have you done 100 kilos? Well, no, I haven't. I said, how do you know you can't do it if you haven't tried? Oh, just because I haven't done it. And I said, well, how about we do it tonight, and we find what your new limitation is. So rather than see it as a failure, they're seeing it as finding their new limitation. And that night she did 140 kilos. It was her new limitation, right? So now the players come into that environment very excited to find what their new limit looks like. So it's, you know, it's a new way of looking at failure, what they think is failure. It's just an ability to get better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard it said that a rugby training should look more like what you see at a skateboard park, where failure is embraced, you know, where the epic fail is embraced, and we all want to be able to sort of stretch our players without breaking them. But you're creating that environment where we learn from our mistakes, because that's how we learn, right? Yeah. Hey, I think we've probably got time just for one last question, just from both of you, to answer just very quickly. And thank you to everybody that's been on the webinar for the fantastic questions that you've had. We could probably talk all evening, but I know that Whitney's in Canada. And Mel's just got home from to our wahine trying to get into coaching.
Sorry, mate, we lost you again.
Lost me again.
Sorry,
I hope we get this last question. What last bit of advice would you give to our wahine getting into coaching or for their coaching journey?
After you, Mel.
Oh, well, thank you. I would say embrace it, go for it, give it everything you got, and find, you know, don't be afraid to tap into female coaches in particular that are on the trot doing the mahi already, because I can tell you now, not one of them wouldn't be adverse to sharing their knowledge and mentoring you in some way, shape or form. You know, I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for females to express themselves just as much as males in this game. It's a game for everyone. So, yeah.
Cool. Piece of advice, I would say when you are early on in your journey, continue to challenge yourself around, are you coaching what you need or what the players need? So are you coaching perfect because you want to get it right and it feels good for you, or is it messy and ugly because they need to learn to be more adaptable and you're not there? Are you leaving them hanging when they want an answer every now and then because they've got a problem solve themselves, or do you want to show them that you know about that? So yeah, who's the training for? And if you can, plan it for them.
Oh, beautiful, Whitney. Thank you for that athlete-centered approach. Mel, Whitney, thank you both for your time this evening. Wish you all the best for your upcoming games and campaigns. You talked about doing the mahi. Mel, you both are doing the mahi. You're walking the walk, talking the talk. Inspiration to anybody involved in rugby. Keep up the great work. We wish you all the best. To all our people, attendees this evening, we wish you all the best as well. Thank you for all that you do in keeping our players engaged, having a fabs time. Make sure you're having a fabs time as well. Reach out to your provincial unions on how they might support your own development. We've had questions around provincial union support. Reach out to them. I'm sure they're there to help. I know they're there to help. And from me, all the best for the rest of your season for everybody. Stay well, stay safe. Hope everyone's keeping warm out there. And yeah, pomarie, ka kite, and good evening.